All right, I got a big stack of CDs here. Gonna look at a dozen releases that are my somewhat old school um, West Coast soundtracks and compilations. I've talked about some other ones on other videos. I won't repeat them here. But we're gonna start off with a couple interesting ones. So Death Row Records, we all know the story. Dr. Dre, Snoop, Suge Knight, Tupac. Crazy story, you know, over the years I read so many books and documentaries and so much about them. And that's still probably my favorite era, the 90s Death Row stuff. That was probably what made me really kind of fall in love with hip-hop, that era, even though there was stuff I liked before that. And when Suge Knight was in jail, I don't think he was released yet, but he still owned Death Row Records. And it was around the time that Dr. Dre put out Chronic 2001 on his own. And this was probably Death Row's way at getting back at him, although it definitely didn't hold back 2001, one of the probably the biggest selling hip-hop albums ever. But this was called Chronic 2000, Still Smoking. It came out in 1999 on Death Row. Strange compilation. There's a couple Tupac songs, post-mortem ones. Daz is on here, Corrupt's on here, a bunch of the Death Row names, but also some of the new artists that Suge was trying to work with. One was The Realist, who sounded a lot like Tupac, and I actually liked his music for what it was, and that's the best song on here, Gotta Love Gangstas. It's The Realist with Richie Rich and Scarface. Okay, we're gonna keep going with Death Row. A little bit later on, they put out this, Too Gangsta for Radio. This is a good one. It's got Crooked Eye, Tretch, Above the Law. There's a Tupac song, Thug Nature, on here. My favorite one is probably This Is the Thanks You Get by The Relatives. There's a lot of dissing Suge, Daz, Dr. Dre. I think there's even like some Eminem disses and stuff on here. So it's a strange album. Again, most of these songs are exclusive to this. And so there's some big names, some new names, some names that never really went anywhere. But I listened to this one a lot when it came out. There's Suge, Snoop, and Dre during better times. Sticking with Death Row again, this is when Suge was out of jail. He put out this soundtrack to what I thought was going to be a movie, Dysfunctional Family. It's actually a soundtrack to a stand-up comedy special. And I'll personally end for a second. I remember on my honeymoon, my wife and I saw Eddie Griffin live at that casino off the Strip, the Rio, and we used to go to a lot of stand-up comedy back then. That was a top 10 show for me for sure. But back to the album. This is really good. This is when Corrupt briefly came back into the Death Row fold. He's got some songs on here. My favorite one on here is One Call, which is with Gangsta Rid from Booyah Tribe. Juvenile has a cool song on here. Ja Rule has a cool song on here. It's just some out-of-towners. Crooked Eyes on a bunch of songs. It's a really good CD. But didn't really make too much of a splash. Cheating a little bit on this one because a lot of the rappers are from the East Coast, but this is Soul Assassins Volume 1. The beats were done by, and the album was put together by DJ Muggs from LA's Cypress Hill. So I'm going to include it here. There's a song with by Goody Mob, Decisions. And I also like Move Ahead by KRS-One. So yeah, I'm kind of cheating on that one, but that's okay. Okay, let's go with some soundtracks. This one's not so memorable. This was a horror movie with Snoop Dogg called Bones. And who's on here? Snoop, MC Ren, Cocaine, Trey D, Exhibit, Cypress Hill. I was never a big fan of this one. And I think I watched the movie, which also wasn't great. But a more memorable movie and a much more memorable soundtrack. Friday. One of the classic soundtracks of the 90s. You have Keep Their Heads Ringing by Dr. Dre. Friday Night by Scarface. Friday by Ice Cube. You got Mac 10, Cypress Hill, the Isley Brothers, Rick James, Funk Dubious, EA Ski, Roger. Just funk and hip-hop greats all over this. You know what? I forgot to bring out my next Friday soundtrack, which, even though I didn't think that was all that good of a movie, that was a good CD. There was some good songs on there. Back to Death Row Records again. Murder Was the Case. Of course, the title track, Murder Was the Case. You have Natural Born Killers, which is Dr. Dre and Ice Cube. Dollars and Cents by DJ Quick. What's my other favorite one? One More Day by Nate Dogg. Another movie soundtrack, Caught Up. Mostly West Coast, but there's people from all over the US on here. My favorite song for sure is Girl by Loonies featuring Crooked Eye. And the Loonies has another song on here with Daz and Corrupt called Buddy. That's another good one. I remember this movie. Haven't seen it in a long time. Original Gangstas with Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, and Pam Grier. Get that. I gotta watch that again. I remember seeing it when I was like 13, and now all the movies I've seen, like those names now, like amazing, right? There they are. 3 Times Crazy, The Click, Ghetto Boys, MC Ren, Spice One, Ice-T, Menace to Society. I haven't seen this movie in 25 years, but it's definitely a big name in these kinds of movies. MC8, Too Short, Spice One, DJ Quick. You even got some out-of-towners here with UGK and Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Now we're going to look at greatest hits compilation by different artists. Sick With It. So you got E40, Be Legit, The Click, Sugar T, D-Shot. My favorite songs on here. Again, all these songs are on more famous full-length albums. But The Click, Scandalous. Hurricane by The Click. And Sprinkle Me by E40. And finally, sticking with Sick With It, this is the Sick With It umbrella, Fetty Fetchin'. I don't think this one really impressed me upon purchase, but haven't listened to it in years. You got all the aforementioned old school Sick With It rappers, and plus the new generation and just other underground rappers from the Bay Area. And I probably have a couple more sitting around somewhere. I'm sure I'll talk about them one day. But that was fun. Just some West Coast soundtracks and collections. Thank you.